Income Tax 2020 Practice Problem 1, Presentation 10, Adjustments to Income, Charitable Contributions if you take the standard deduction. Come in, relax with Income Tax 2020. Here we are in our Lacerte tax software. You don't need the Lacerte tax software to follow along, although I do think they have a 30-day free trial. So if you get access to a promotional or demo version of it or any other tax software, it could be a good tool to practice with. We're going to be continuing on with our practice problem. In the prior section, we entered the data for basically the main income sources, and that's going to be included here in the total income line item. Now we're focusing in on the above the line deduction as compared or contrasted to the below the line deductions, these being the adjustments to income as opposed to either the standard or itemized deductions being the below the line deductions. And we're going to be concentrating, those are going to be found on the Schedule 1. So within the Schedule 1, we have the $1,850. Now this is actually kind of the exception to the rule because this is one of these strange type of ones that were put in this year, and you would think they would have put it into the Schedule 1 Part 2, but they didn't. They actually put it on the first page of the 1040, and that's going to be related to the charitable contributions if you take the standard deduction. So remember that charitable contributions is going to be something that you'll typically have documentation from the client for, so they may just tell you what the charitable contributions are, and you're gonna have to let them know that you gotta have the supporting documentation, of course, in the event that that you have an audit, or they might give you the documentation that was provided by a not-for-profit organization that will show you that information. But you might not have as standardized information for the data input as you would for, say, the income line items, where you would typically have W-2s and 1099s for many of the items up top in the income line item. So for the charitable contributions, remember that usually, those are going to be itemized deductions that would be down here in the itemized deductions, and there's kind of an expanded level or amount of charitable contributions that can be given. In other words, you could give something other than simply cash contributions and whatnot and possibly be able to take them as a deduction if you are itemizing. However, you have to be able to itemize in order to get a benefit from the deductions on the Schedule A. If you're not itemizing and you make charitable contributions to, say, not-for-profit organizations, generally cash contributions, they've added this kind of above-the-line deduction, but they put it on the first page of the 1040 here on line 10B. So if you have charitable contributions, that means that every year you want to ask about charitable contributions. You could say, do you have charitable contributions? And because you can take them even if you do not itemize up to basically the $300, you're going to be asking about them. If they provide you information related to charitable contributions, then you got to think, okay, should I put it here or should I put it in the itemized deductions? Right now, we don't have the itemized deductions, so we're going to assume they're going to go above the line. So let's imagine we had charitable contributions for like $500 or something that they told us about or that they gave us the documentation for. And we're going to go back in and we're going to say, okay, I'm going to put that in the above the line deductions here. I'm going to say that they're here. I'm going to say 5,000. And then I'm going to force the system to take the above the line deductions. In other words, if I put, it's 500, I said, not 5,000. But if I put it above the line, then when I go back on over, the system might not put it there. It might not put it where I expect it. And where did it put it instead? It depends on the system you're looking at. It put it into the itemized deductions. So it defaulted to the itemized deductions because that's where it normally goes if it's a charitable contribution. And so whatever system you're using for the tax software, you're going to have to tell it, hey, look, I want you to put it not there on the itemized deductions, but because they're not itemizing, I want you to put it on the first page of the 1040. So I'm going to put it back on over. I'm going to say, for Lacerte, it's this little checkbox. It says deduct cash charitable contributions if taken the standard deduction. It forces the standard deduction. So you got to be careful with that box. Because if they're able to itemize, you do not want to force the standard deduction. So I'm going to go back on over here, and now we have it up here in the $300. So it capped it at $300. I can't take the $500. Capped it at basically the $300, and that's it. Now, when we start to itemize, we might go back into it. So I might put a note in my notes here, in my open items, and saying charitable. We had charitable contributions of 500, we took 300 above the line. If they itemize, they may deduct more on Schedule A or something like that. Something to jot down as I'm entering the return. If I don't know whether they're going to itemize it or not, I'm just going to put it up top. And when we get to the itemizing, then we may adjust that and add it to the itemized deduction. So that's what we have now then. So we have this 1,850 that's coming from Schedule 1, and then this 300, which is just on the face of the 1040 for some reason. And that adds up to the 2,150. So here's where we stand at this point. Income, W-2 income, interest income, dividend income, capital loss, 3,900, other income, gambling winnings and whatnot that we put there, 8,130. And then this is what we've done in this section. We had the 1,850 from the student loan interest, the $300 charitable contributions above the line. That gives us our total adjustments of 2,150. Therefore, the AGI, or adjusted gross income, 78,880. Remember, this number is key because that's going to be the number that phase outs will be focused on. Then we have the 24,800 for the standard deduction because they're married filing joint, bringing the taxable income to 54,80. Then on page 2, that's going to make the calculation, which we will be dependent on the tax return or the software typically to do, is going to be that 5,980 or 5,938. Then we had the withholdings that came from the W-2s, 8,000 to have then the refund at this point, 2,062.